Hey, what's up, guys? This is Isaac Kills, otherwise known as Nick, and today we're going to be talking about Cyberpunk 2077 Edge Runners. And I gotta say, I enjoyed this season. I didn't know anything about it. It actually was a season that was suggested to me by my coworker, and I really enjoyed it. It had very compelling characters, had a very good story. Um, I only had really one small issue with it story wise, but otherwise, it was very, very good. It's rated R. It does have some cartooned nudity slash sex scenes, and it does not shy away from that aspect of the rated R-ness of it. The storyline follows a character named David Martinez who loses his mother very, very early. I mean, he's only like 15 or maybe 17 years old, and he's going to this private school, and they were just barely making it financially. They were very late on the rent. They were about to be kicked out. They have this very heartwarming scene where they're at this hospital, and it kind of reminds you of what happens today, because basically they paid for a package that was kind of a cheap package, and because they paid for the cheap package, she died because they wouldn't resuscitate her after the fact. The surgery went well. She just had some trouble after the surgery, and they wouldn't resuscitate her. He was so, you know, basically broke that he had to get her cremated, and he brought her home with him. And, the rent was overdue. So he had to crawl through this vent into the apartment. And you kind of feel, right away for the character, in episode one. I mean, you relate to him. I mean, especially with people who lost their parents at a young age, you can kind of feel the struggle that he's about to face. So the first episode kind of draws you in. He gets introduced to this character named Lucy, who's a pickpocket, and he, before meeting Lucy, gets implanted with his first implant. That was a piece of military implant that his mom had gotten a hold of before she died to sell to a character named Maine, who's part of the Cyberpunks, who's Lucy's friend. We find that later on. But he installs it because he lost in a fight from the school bully, and he was really just trying to get an edge up and try to get some revenge on him, which he ultimately does. When he gets this implant implanted, it makes him move really fast, like superhuman, like almost like Flash, like to the point where you move like hundreds of feet in a blink of an eye. And this implant, you're only really supposed to be able to use it like maybe two, maybe three times a day. But David could pretty much use it at will. And he's so talented, and has so much resilience of the chrome, which is like the technology you can install in your body, that his mind doesn't get poisoned, which is what something, usually would happen. If you put too much chrome or technology in your body, usually you have like this psychotic reaction where you just basically start murdering everybody for no reason. So he just has a very high tolerance for it. He wins in the fight. Um, and then when he's in this train ride, he meets Lucy, who we talked about, and she's a pickpocket, and he moves very fast, and she does as well. And he notices her stealing chips from people's necks. I guess just stealing data, and he catches her trying to steal his and grabs her hand, and they pretty much get introduced. Now, she has this bargain with him, that they should work together, but he overworks himself so much that he faints because he's not taking like these immune suppressants you're supposed to take, because he has no idea what he's doing. And the person that installed it in him really just wants the tech, so he's kind of counting on him to die. So coincidentally, Lucy takes him to that same person. They get the meds, and he's able to recover. They go back to her place, and you get this little cute little scene where he's never really hanged out at a girl's house, and he's kind of embarrassed. They kind of hit it off, and they go in this like virtual reality thing where they're on the moon, and they kind of like on a date almost. I kind of got a kick out of this scene. It's a little romantic, you know. So you kind of feel the characters kind of, you know, liking each other basically. And sadly, you find out that she kind of tricked him. She invited Maine, which was the person who originally owned that technology. She knew that the technology got stolen from her mom. Well, not her mom, but David's mom, who was working for Maine, and she was going to sell that to Maine. But they didn't know that David is her son. So she kind of set a trap for him. He was a little pissed. I mean, that he explained the situation that he didn't know it was his, obviously, and he didn't know that his mom was going to sell it to him. And he explained why he put it on. Ultimately, they end up making a decision that David's going to be joining the crew. And they kind of test him first with the job, and he passes with flying colors. He ends up being part of the crew. Now, David, you know, he can pretty much use his abilities at will when usually you can't. And Maine, who's the leader of the crew, he, you can tell already, is kind of having side effects. And you can tell that, or you know, by the fourth or fifth episode. And you can kind of tell David is gaining the respect of the other crew members. You got Kiwi. I think one of them was Gloria. You have Maine. You have Dorio, who's the girlfriend of Maine. And then Lucy, of course. And then you have Rebecca. And you have, I think, Rebecca's brother. But all interesting characters, by the way. All with their own different quirks and personalities. And you can kind of tell, you know, through the episodes that all of them are really starting to trust David. Later on in the season, you get introduced to the psychopaths and the people who become psychopaths because they put too much chrome in their body, too much technology. And one of them kills Rebecca's brother. And David ends up saving the day by using his ability, getting behind him, and you know, shoots his head off, but not before her brother got killed. It kind of flashes forward a little bit, and Maine decides to take a job. It's a little bit dangerous, and this is where Maine goes crazy and starts killing, you know, refusively. Dorio tries to stop it, of course. I kind of like this one scene where Dorio basically kicks Maine into the car and says, "You got no choice," slams the door and heads off. But Maine, you know, ultimately ends up dying because he knows he's going psychopath, full psychopath, so he kind of sacrifices himself. And you've kind of flashed forward, and it's maybe a couple of years later, and now David is the leader of the crew. Dorio's sadly dead, died right before Maine, and now David's in charge of the crew, and they're running multiple jobs. Now, the one part I didn't like about this season or series was some reason David decided to put more chrome than Maine did, even though he knew what Maine did by putting too much chrome ultimately drove him insane. So David did the same exact fucking thing. So David, I mean, he's just basically just abs, chest, and that's it. I mean, he cut his arms off, his legs, everything else is just mech. So he's living with Lucy, and they're taking all these jobs. And Lucy decides to take some time off from, you know, doing the normal business. And you find out that later on, Lucy is actually trying to stop Arsaka from gaining more information and threatening basically David's life. And David doesn't know this at first. He thinks that she's just wanting space and time off because of what happened to Maine and Dorio. Later on, you find out though, after a big job that he takes for Faraday, who Faraday is like the bad guy in the season. Maine was working for Faraday as well, and Faraday is trying to trap David. He's trying to make David kind of like a guinea pig. So Faraday hires David for a job with his crew. He corrupts Kiwi into working for him and gets her involved into trapping them. So they think that they're heisting or stealing this piece of tech for Faraday. And Faraday has set up this piece of tech for David to try to see if his body could handle the tech. And he ends up kidnapping Lucy and uses Lucy's voice to tell David to put on that mech suit, which is like a huge Hulk buster, basically. Don't know if I like the design too much because this totally leaves David's body bare and exposed, but it makes him very powerful and strong. So he, under the guise of thinking that Lucy told him to, puts on the mech suit, and then finds out because Lucy ends up escaping for a little bit and tells David not to put it on, but he already has it on. Lucy kind of tells him where he's at and lets him know, that Faraday is trapping him. So at this point, he has this whole like army after him, which is the reason why he put on the mech suit in the first place, is to protect his crew. So he figures out and finds out that Kiwi backstabbed him. And, Rebecca and I forgot I think it's like some type of cowboy dude is the only, members left. And, they stand back while David pretty much wrecks all the soldiers. And David catches up to Faraday and basically risks his life. And you don't really know if he's dead quite yet. Like in the end of this, last episode, you see that he might have been shot in the head, but it doesn't really show it completely. So it kind of leaves it open to interpretation. Lucy ends up surviving, though, after the fight and altercation with Faraday, and, kind of shows her kind of riding off into the sunset kind of thing. So it kind of leaves it open. Kiwi, sadly, ends up dying. Faraday got to her. Rebecca, sadly, ends up dying because I forgot what the name of that mech was, but he was basically as powerful as David is in his mech. David ultimately ends up taking him down in a pretty awesome fight that I really enjoyed. But a lot of people got taken out. So I don't know if they're going to make a second season. Lucy definitely survived. That cowboy dude survived. And maybe David. So they're going to have to introduce a lot more new characters and explain how David is alive, if he is alive. I wonder if Lucy is going to get revenge, on the person who killed David, or maybe have killed David. But I did enjoy it. It was very, very entertaining. Get the characters was very compelling. as somebody, like I said, that lost my parents, well, my mom very young, and then my dad uh, recently. I related to the character and the struggle that he went through and the choices that he made just to kind of survive. I mean, at least he had heart and morals when it came to his decisions. And you kind of felt when he was making decisions based on him going kind of psychotic because of the chrome, killing, innocent people and stuff like that. And, it touched a lot of um, places a lot of shows wouldn't touch. So even though it's an animated series, it's very adult and very well written, and the characters are very well, um, cared for and worked out as far as arcs is concerned. You can really tell each character's motivations and what really drives them. Except for Kiwi. Kiwi was always kind of mysterious. You know, I don't know if it was because Maine really, you know, beat her up one day, if it was because of that incident. Because, I mean, she knew Maine was, you know, corrupted because of that chrome and being, psychopath basically for a second. But everyone else, like, was, you really can kind of, tell who they cared about and what, really drove them. So I really enjoyed it. It's really good, watching something that is well written, well acted out. The animation is really, really good. I compared it to the animation with Bleach, and I really enjoyed Bleach as well. So if you haven't watched it, I mean, this came out in September. I would definitely give it a watch. All 10 episodes, you're probably talking about maybe, I don't know, 4 hours, maybe close to 5 hours of watch time. So every second of it, though, is not wasted. There's no filler episodes or even filler time. Everything is, has to do with the main part of the story, and it progresses really well. So, anyways, guys, that is my thoughts on Cyberpunk 2077. My rating out of 10, I would probably give it 7.5, close, very close to 8. The only thing that would probably knock it from 8 was just, it's hard for me to believe David would make the same mistake Maine did. You would think that he would, since he does have a natural tolerance, would keep the chrome levels low so he can use his main ability, which is speed, and keep control of his mind. So that's the only thing that I would say I didn't really jive too well with, but everything else was very well done, and I enjoyed it. So, anyways, guys, that is my thoughts. If you guys did enjoy the video, please hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one.